So that's where the book finishes, suggesting that we have underestimated the risks. Various people have asked me, do you think you're being an alarmist, right? Is this are you just sort of exploiting public fear? And my reply is no. I don't think I'm being an alarmist. I don't think that the number one greatest danger in terms of terrorism is entomological weapons, and I don't mean to suggest that in the book at all, and I don't think I do. But my concern is that they're not even on the radar, as has been admitted by the Department of Homeland Security. That seems to be a foolish error. And I think a proportionality in terms of our preparations makes much more sense than what we tend to do, which is devote tremendous amount of resources to whatever threat was most recently in the news. This hasn't been in the news, so I guess what I'm trying to do is put it into the news and maybe get a response in terms of our politicians and Homeland Security officials. But I'm happy now to open this up to questions, comments, rebuttals, observations, whatever it is that may be striking you. I've gone through a long history very quickly, so is there something that's been left out?
First of all, I'll tell you, that was really informative, extremely well done. I appreciate very much you sharing this with us.
Thank you.
My concern, having had a relatively good life, is the tremendous debt load that we carry right now as a nation, along with the tremendous expense requirements we have. The two wars that we're fighting right now, there's just a beating on Ukraine, and all the other factors we have. We don't have the money unless we borrow it, which you can't do forever. You have to pay
Right.
back. So that's kind of a frustrating aspect of whereas big life funds are kind of channel in one direction, the most immediate need, rather than the strategic view.
Right. Right. I think there is this. So the question is, we've got this tremendous debt load. The strategic view, the long-term view, is well, in a sense, a luxury, given that we have tactical problems right at our doorsteps. So I look at, for instance, border. What we're doing with border protection, right? And I think how much money goes into that, and how relatively little money it would take. And I'm not saying that we have to build sort of the world's finest public health infrastructure, but what we have now is fairly deplorable. If in fact we have a new disease arrive, say something like Rift Valley fever, the costs of managing that disease, given our current public health infrastructure, which is called the emergency room, is going to be enormously expensive. And in the relatively short term, compared to having a well-prepared public health infrastructure where we would be able to diagnose, detect, and treat disease much more effectively. And so, I think you're right, though. I mean, there is that sense that we have these continual crises, and so we're always putting patches on things. And patching is a politically popular but unsustainable, I think, ultimately approach to managing public resources. How we shift from short-term to long-term, from heroic intervention to sort of sustainable prevention. Look at the amount of money we spend on transplanting hearts versus the amount of money we spend on encouraging, right, healthy diets. It's sort of a crazy distribution, but of course, I mean, some of it's cultural history. I mean, so since we're in a humanities context, right, a lot of it's cultural history. We come from a culture that favors the heroic, right? The heroic intervention is I mean, I can't name any sort of cultural heroes who simply prevented something from happening, right? I guess we dodging bullets, right, is not a good way to become a hero, right? Tackling crises is the way to become a hero. Whatever you think about the current administration's approach to the economic crisis, let's just stipulate for purposes of argument that we actually did avert a depression that would have knocked the socks off the Great Depression, right? Talk about sort of a heroic act, but of course, we don't see it that way because we didn't see that we might have prevented a horrific amount of human suffering, right? It's the intervention, not the prevention, that grasps our attention as sort of a culture of people in a society.